Agree, but with a difference. Like disagreeing, agreeing is less simple than it may appear. Just as you need to avoid simply contradicting views you disagree with, you also need to do more than simply echo views you agree with. Even as you're agreeing, it's important to bring something new and fresh to the table, adding something that makes you a valuable participant in the conversation. There are many moves that enable you to contribute something of your own to a conversation, even as you agree with what someone else has said. You may point out some unnoticed evidence or line of reasoning that supports X's claims that X herself hadn't mentioned. You may cite some corroborating personal experience or situation not mentioned by X that her views help readers understand. If X's views are particularly challenging or esoteric, what you bring to the table could be an accessible translation, an explanation for readers not already in the know. In other words, your text can usefully contribute to the conversation simply by pointing out unnoticed implications or explaining something that needs to be better understood. Whatever mode of agreement you choose, the important thing is to open up some difference or contrast between your position and the one you're agreeing with, rather than simply parroting what it says. Some writers avoid the practice of agreeing almost as much as others avoid disagreeing. In a culture like America's that prizes originality, independence, and competitive individualism, writers sometimes don't like to admit that anyone else has made the same point, seemingly beating them to the punch. In our view, however, as long as you can support a view taken by someone else without merely restating what he or she has said, there is no reason to worry about being unoriginal. Indeed, there is good reason to rejoice when you agree with others, since those others can lend credibility to your argument. While you don't want to present yourself as a mere copycat of someone else's views, you also need to avoid sounding like a lone voice in the wilderness. But do be aware that whenever you agree with one person's view, you are likely disagreeing with someone else's. It is hard to align yourself with one position without at least implicitly positioning yourself against others. The psychologist Carol Gilligan does just that in an essay in which she agrees with scientists who argue that the human brain is hardwired for cooperation, but in so doing aligns herself against anyone who believes that the brain is wired for selfishness and competition. These findings join a growing convergence of evidence across the human sciences, leading to a revolutionary shift in consciousness. If cooperation, typically associated with altruism and self-sacrifice, sets off the same signals of delight as pleasures commonly associated with hedonism and self-indulgence, if the opposition between selfish and selfless, self versus relationship biologically makes no sense, then a new paradigm is necessary to reframe the very terms of the conversation. Carol Gilligan, Sisterhood is Pleasurable, A Quiet Revolution in Psychology. In agreeing with some scientists that the opposition between selfish and selfless makes no sense, Gilligan implicitly disagrees with anyone who thinks the opposition does make sense. Basically, what Gilligan says could be boiled down to a template. I agree that blank, a point that needs emphasizing since so many people still believe blank. If group X is right that blank, as I think they are, then we need to reassess the popular assumption that blank. What such templates allow you to do, then, is to agree with one view while challenging another, a move that leads into the domain of agreeing and disagreeing simultaneously.